Hey, it's Eric G. Around the House is sponsored by Baldwin Hardware. For 75 years, Baldwin Hardware has been known for its first-class quality and craftsmanship in door and cabinetry hardware. As an alumnus of the Baldwin Hardware Design Council, I can say I have seen the details and quality from design to the finished product. If you're looking for a new style and old-world craftsmanship, I can tell you there is only one Baldwin Hardware. Check out what would look great in your home at baldwinhardware.com.
It's Around the House. When it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is a lot to know, but we've got you covered. This is Around the House.
Welcome to the Around the House Show, the next generation of home improvement. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Eric G. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Monument Grills. If you're looking for a brand new barbecue, it is tailgating season out there. If you want something affordable, high quality with all those cool features that the high-end guys get, check them out at monumentgrills.com. Happy midweek here, guys. This is our weekday special. This is that show we do that didn't make it into last weekend's show or not make it into this weekend's radio show and podcast. Thanks for joining me. Today, I wanted to talk about a common mistake that people do when they're trying to store rainwater. They'll go to rainwater harvesting, and there's a lot of comments out there like government won't let me do it. And generally speaking, you can grab that water off your roof. But here's the problem. You can cause significant damage to your house by not doing this correctly. Like I see a lot of damage being done by people putting in those decorative rain chains because the water splashes off, gets on the house, causes water damage, goes around the water. A base of that is splashing out. It's not going down that downspout, causes basement damage or crawl space damage. You can get water down there, cause mold issues. It can be very expensive. But here's where people get into trouble. They'll go, I'm going to store water because I'm going to use it out in my garden. I'm going to use it for later this year or early next year, and I'm going to water with it and reuse that rainwater. I totally get it. But here's where the problem lies. If you think about 1 inch of water on the average roof, and I'm talking about 1,700 square foot average roof size. Now, that doesn't really have to do much with the square footage of your house, but that's the square footage of roof because that's what's collecting the water. So I want to get my facts right. That is about 1,054 gallons of water. Now, here's the problem. A 50-gallon drum filled up with water is 416 pounds. So if you put 3 of those down, which would be about 1 inch of rain, plus a little extra, you're now putting a lot of weight on the foundation. I have seen multiple homes in my career of people taking those kind of big square cubes that are like a yard square. Those hold about 2,700 pounds of water. I saw somebody put 2 of those next to their house, and because it was right next to the foundation, they had to do a foundation repair because it pushed the wall of the foundation in to the basement. So be really careful with rainwater collection. If you're going to do it, get it out of the way. Get it away from that foundation wall. Be careful. Don't put it on decks because all of a sudden, if you put 3-4 barrels up there on your deck, that's like putting a hot tub on it. That can be a serious problem. And that can cause some serious structural issues to the foundation or the deck that it's sitting on. Many times around the perimeter of the house, they didn't do the best job of packing that and filling it in. So all of a sudden, you're going to pack that in more. It's putting pressure in on those walls. And all of a sudden, you can have a patio that starts dipping back towards the house. Now the water is going to rain down on it, and it's going to push back, and it's going to go towards the house and then away from the house. So that can be a very serious issue. So it's something to really consider when you're collecting rainwater like that. The best case scenario is not to collect the rainwater and put it into a downspout system that goes out into a storm drain and gets it at least 10 feet away from the house. But if you're going to store it, make sure you get 5 or 6 feet away from the house with those barrels or that storage system. And then make sure that you have an overflow that gets the water even farther away in case you get a couple inches of rain someplace and you've overloaded your system or you're not taking the water out of it. That can be another issue. All of a sudden that backs up and you've got a problem. So make sure you have, what would be a heavy storm. Figure out what your heaviest storm is in the area and make sure that you've got probably twice of that in storage or a really good way to divert it when it does get full. That way you don't have those damage problems, because here's the issue that I see is that if you flood your basement because of that rainwater system that you built, I'm not sure if an insurance company is going to cover that or not. They might, but they might say that you caused that neglect. And that can be an issue when there's a big claim. So you don't want to see that. And that's the problem with insurance companies these days when it comes to your house. They usually try every little aspect they can to get away from having to pay that out. And if you cause that issue, that could get really expensive. And nobody wants to see that. That can be an expensive one for you because now it's coming out of your pocket. So be really careful with rainwater collection. Not worried about if it's, if your government allows it or not. Most places where they say they don't, well, yeah, you're right. It's tough. Some areas do say that, hey, that water coming off your property, you don't own that it goes into the city or the county or the state, but there's no rainwater police out there running around unless you're overflowing, and that's a whole other issue. And that could be something too that you've got to be careful with when you design out these gutter systems. If you have an overflow and it runs down and you're like, hey, I ran it down the front of my yard, it's a slope, it goes down to the sidewalk, goes into the street. If you're running water across the sidewalk, that can be a hazard. If it freezes, that's ice. That gives you more liability. And then on top of it, you could have somebody come by from your city, county, road department, whatever, and go, hey, you're putting water into the street. This isn't a good thing. Control that. Do something different. So make sure you understand that. Many places, you'll see if you drive down a street and they've got gutters and storm drain systems, some cities, they designed it for that. Some of those streets, you'll see these little round holes where it comes out and you're looking down the curbs and there's round holes in front of each house. Those are either low point drains or gutter drains out of the house. It goes into that storm system and goes away. That's not a bad thing. But the problem is nobody maintains those. So you should be actually going through and making sure that those are clear. I'd water jet those every 5 years or less. Because I tell you what, if I walk the dog up here on the next street up here on the back way and it's raining outside, which I do very often in the wintertime, we'll be walking through there and 15% of those are actually working. The rest of those are backed up someplace on their property and that water's not leaving, causing damage. So make sure that those things are clear, especially if you're coming into the rainy season where you're at. If you're coming into the dry season, it's not as big a deal, but it's a great time to maintain it. Now you can run a snake through most of those, and that's why you want to make, if you do these systems where the water comes down off those roofs and you've got trees or dirt or things like that that get into this water, make sure that you build a system that you can run a snake down or a hydrojet or something to clean it out with. That's the problem when you use that more flexible corrugated material underground, is it's a lot harder to clean up and it does catch a lot of dirt. So I like to use ABS or PVC out drain lines outside because it's easier to keep clean and there's less intrusions. And the thing is when you glue those things together, you have the snap together, roots can get in there pretty easy. When it's glued, it's a lot harder. So if you've got trees, shrubs, things like that get into that, that's something to consider because that can be pretty darn troublesome. So something to consider when you're working on these systems, and it's something good. And it's a great time of year right now to go around and check those gutters while you're at it. If you're working on it, make sure if it's raining hard and you're coming into winter, especially if you're in the northern states where you've got snow, take a look and walk around and make sure that those gutters are attached correctly. If you've got something droopy, jump on Amazon, head to your hardware store, get some of the screw style clamps that work with your system, and you can get up there and safely take care of that, or just hire a gutter person to come in and do that. That way, you've got something that's not dripping water, because all that water landing on a deck or the foundation, again, can cause other issues. And that's a big one. All right, everybody, I'm going to cut this a little bit short today. I've got a busy day today, and looking forward, we've got a brand new Around the House Northwest television show. If you haven't caught that, it's a new version of the show where we did a big refresh with it. It's a half-hour show. We're spending a lot more time on the production side of things. So we're actually got about where we had Bradley on there and my buddy, doing that show together for the last almost 80 episodes there. We ended up, it was just two of us. Now we got a whole handful of people working on the show today, and we're doing a half hour. So it's a different production style, and hopefully we'll get that thing dialed in exactly where we want it, because it's, you know how it is with new things. You got to get it dialed in where it is, but I'm happy with where it's going. It's a whole different look, and I hope you enjoy it out there. And we got a great show coming up this weekend. I'll give you a little tease. I sit down with Andrew Pace, my buddy, healthy building expert. We're going to talk about some of those tricks and tips to make sure if you're out shopping for a home, what's the best years of homes to get? What's the best stuff to deal with mold, A lot of these different things we're going to dive into, and we've got a great one. If you listen on the podcast in the premium episode, you want to catch this because we talk for almost an hour and only about 40 minutes goes into the radio show and podcast. So we have a whole other discussion on the premium episode with this, which is so much fun. We get into whiskey because he's also a Scotch and whiskey sommelier. So we get into that on the backside of the show a little bit and talk about that, but it's only in the premium episode because that's where we put that stuff. And the cool thing is right now through September and into October, we're offering a 10-day free trial. So if you want to listen to it, sign up for the free trial. If you don't want to do it, no worries, but we're putting in those extended conversations into the premium episode. It's $4 a month. It's less than the price of coffee at Starbucks. So that way you can get something there and it covers the cost of the show and keeps us going without putting in. And if you don't like the ads, there's no ads in that. There's one in the middle, nothing in the middle. There's one at the beginning, something in the end. And the only time we put an ad in there is if we have a contest giveaway or something that you might want to have. Other than that, we keep that commercial free throughout the middle. So you don't have to worry about that. No added commercials. So if you want the commercial free, that's one way to do it. All right, everybody, have a great rest of the week. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure and click the subscribe button and get notified when something new comes out. And make sure you check out that YouTube channel as well. I'm Eric G. Thanks for tuning in to Around the House.
Undiscovered, anywhere beyond the mean. Life is a love song, let's be lovers. We're all over the radio. Take my hand, I know where to go. All over the radio with you.
Hey guys, it's Eric G, and I have a special offer for you. Do you want to get the podcast a couple days early? How about extended content that isn't in the typical podcast? Maybe you want to check out all the back episodes of the show. And I got a special deal for the first 10 days are free. I want to personally invite you to be an Around the House insider. For about $4 a month, you can get exclusive extended episodes, early access to the weekend show, and exclusive access to me, Eric G, for project questions or comments. Check on the link on your podcast player in the show notes or head to aroundthehouseonline.com and look for the join here button. Make sure and sign up today. As always, thanks for tuning in to Around the House.